Ocarina of Time, Pokemon Platinum, and Mario Kart on the Wii. These were the games that shaped my childhood and built what felt like an unshakable truth, that video games exist to bring people happiness. Now, I was a kid, and when you're young, it's easy to find anything fun. But as I moved into my teenage years and now all the way up into adulthood, I've experienced not only a dramatic change in my own tastes and preferences, but also was able to watch games evolve even further as a form of entertainment. Nowadays, we have an incredibly broad range of games that each offer slightly different things, and while Pokemon will forever hold a special place in my heart and Mario Kart is one of my favorite series of all time, neither of them are what inspired me to make this channel in the first place. As I began to play games that featured much deeper themes and triggered different emotions, my eyes were open to an entirely new side of what the purpose of a game could be. I will still always enjoy titles that don't ask me to dive deep into everything they offer, but at the same time, I always want to experience more types of games, more bold ideas, and more stories that seem to challenge everything I thought I valued. The games that linger in my mind the most are always the games that go far beyond the concept of fun, sometimes even leaving it behind completely. But this then begs the question, if games can make us feel sad, frustrated, terrified, or even guilty, and we can still call them great, then does a game really need to be fun at all? Originally, fun most definitely was the main goal that developers had when gaming was first emerging as a form of media. Titles like Pong, Tetris, and the original Mario Bros. Are all textbook definitions of this. But when looking at what's being produced recently, the difference can often be night and day. That's not to say that games in the modern era are not fun or that they shouldn't be, it's more that the purpose and goals of games are much more diverse. In the simplest terms, games have evolved to no longer require fun to be the most important goal. Nowadays, they're being seen more and more as a unique form of media that can express stories, lessons, or even raw emotions in ways that more traditional means, such as books or film, never could. Recently, I finally got around to playing Shadow of the Colossus, thanks to a recommendation from a comment. It's safe to say that it lived up to the hype it was given, providing me with a unique experience I have not quite found in any other title. But while fun was still a present element in the gameplay, it got shoved to the back seat, while other, more demanding and conflicting emotions took the lead. The goal of this game is extremely simple. Go out and destroy all 16 Colossi in order to revive the girl your character loves. When I started the game, this all seemed pretty by the book and nothing out of the norm. After all, games are meant to be progressed, and the most common way to do so is through defeating enemies. But that is when fun started to step away from the spotlight, because these Colossi were not my enemies, and the game made sure I knew that without ever saying a word. It all starts with that first Colossus. Once I reached my destination and saw this towering giant, I began plotting how I could take it down. After locating the final weak point I needed to strike, I raised my sword and finished the job I set out to do, but that's when my perception of this whole quest began to change. As my sword landed the final blow, the music was suddenly cut off and a tragic, mournful track began to play as this giant fell to his knees and died. That's when the realization hit me. This giant was just minding his business. I attacked him first, and the game had laced my victory with guilt. These feelings only grew with each selfish victory I continued to earn. I kept progressing, not because I was having fun destroying these creatures, but because I felt obligated to the character I inhabited and wanted to see his goal fulfilled. Each time one of these colossi faded away, it felt like I was destroying an ancient piece of art. But I kept on playing. As with each Colossus defeated, the girl was closer to revival, and I was one step closer to completion, the biggest motivation most players have. This was the element that made me want to talk about Shadow of the Colossus, and it's best known as a psychological process known as cognitive dissonance. This is when you experience or hold two conflicting values or cognitions, or when your behavior contradicts your beliefs. In this case, it was how my instincts as a player clashed with my instincts as a person. Normally, games do not try to pit these two instincts against each other. Often, you are trained to feel good whenever you progress through a story. Think of Zelda. Whenever you beat a boss, the world loses a bit of its evil, and you feel good about it. The clearest example of this conflicting conditioning is with the music. I mentioned earlier the shift that the soundtrack had as soon as I landed the final blow on the first Colossus. That continues to be the case throughout the rest of the game and is actually the only time music appears throughout your playthrough. The music itself is conditioning you. As you figure out how to mount these massive creatures and take them down, the soundtrack plays a grand and epic background that slowly builds up more and more the closer you get to that final blow. But the second you land it, the music changes to a distinctly different tone. Your brain is expecting the dopamine that comes along with the buildup you've been experiencing, but instead you receive sorrow. This contrast is the most obvious sign that the game has to teach you what the story is really about. Over the years, I've been conditioned to equate progress with righteousness. I assumed that any enemy I saw deserved to fall and be defeated, but here, the game had tangled up all of the instincts I had grown used to. Before I even set out for the first Colossus, Dorman, the voice that sent me on this quest, said, "The price you will pay will be heavy indeed." Now, once I reached the end, I figured out what he had truly meant, but for my entire playthrough, I thought he was referring to the weight I would feel after each kill. I was quite literally robbing this world of what makes it beautiful. And this world you inhabit also plays a significant role in manifesting the feelings this game aims to bring out. Every time you set out for your next Colossi, you begin your journey at the same temple. You walk outside, hold your sword up to the sun, and with nothing but your weapon and your horse, you set out to destroy your target. But before you can reach that Colossus, you need to spend roughly 10 minutes traversing the world while trying to find your way. There really is not much to do within this land besides following the light of your sword, but I never once felt like it was missing anything. These forbidden lands are vast and signs of life are rare. There's no music outside the sounds of nature and the footsteps of you and your horse. Traversing them makes you feel insignificant, like they were meant to be inhabited by the Colossi alone. They reaffirm the fact that I was the intruder upon these lands and that I did not belong here. As a game, Shadow of the Colossus isn't about the joy of victory, but rather about realizing what victory can cost. When the credits rolled, all I could think about was the one challenge I failed to overcome, the guilt that came along with each triumph. Now, in a video about games that move past fun, it would only be natural to talk about the opposite of fun, feelings of anger and frustration. These are extremely common emotions to feel when playing any type of game. It's natural for you to feel a range of negative emotions when you die, lose all your items, or realize you never saved your progress. These instances are quite common in pretty much any genre of game and are unavoidable to a certain degree, but that's not what I want to look at. I want to talk about a time when the developers explicitly wanted to make you angry, and it was their goal to make you hate a character or a decision they made when writing their story, and by far the best example of this would be The Last of Us Part 2. For all of the games I talk about in this video, I will generally avoid any big spoilers, but I really don't think I'd be able to talk about this game without some aspects being spoiled in a major way. And so if you've not played The Last of Us Part 2 yet and are planning on doing so, then I recommend skipping to this timestamp. Consider this your warning. In this game, you continue the journey of Joel and Ellie, characters you've grown close to after playing The Last of Us Part 1. I played both of these games back to back, so when starting Part 2 for the first time, I was attached to these characters in a personal way that was as fresh as it could be. I had just witnessed and partaken in each of their hardships and was ready to continue their journey, eager to see how they would both continue to grow and adapt to this world. About 2 hours in, this expectation for the game falls apart with one of the most heartbreaking events a game has ever featured. Joel, the character you have grown to love and understand, is killed right in front of you by Abby, a person he had just saved. I had walked into this game blind and can still remember the shock I felt when this happened. Joel and Ellie had been through so many life-threatening encounters so far, and yet made it out each time. Why now did everything have to fall apart? A game had never brought out such extreme feelings for me before, especially negative ones. I hated Abby for what she did, and I hated the developers for betraying me like this. I felt punished as the player. At this point, I debated whether I wanted to even keep playing or not, but one thing made me refuse to put the controller down. I wanted to see Abby pay for what she did just as much as Ellie. And so that became my motivation for the next couple of hours, where I was most definitely not playing for fun, but for the sole purpose of revenge. This journey filled with vengeance continued until about halfway through the game when you switch over to playing as Abby and experience her backstory. At the time, I viewed this as nothing short of a really shitty joke. The whole reason I was still playing this game was to make Abby pay, and now I'm expected to play as her? So I ended up putting the game down for roughly a week. To be honest, the only reason I came back was I already knew this was a heavily praised title and that it would be unlikely to have reached that degree of praise if all it did was piss players off for the second half of the game. Also, I did pay $50 for it, and so I felt obligated to see it through. Even though a week had passed, I still was not too keen on playing as Abby, but again, money was spent and she did have some cool new guns to use, so I continued to work my way through the second half of the narrative. This is where my perspective of Abby slowly begins to shift away from hatred and anger, and by the end of the game, I'm still not sure who was in the right or if there even was a morally correct person at all. Now, how did this game completely dissolve my need for revenge that was so strong I originally had to set the game down when I was told to play as Abby? Well, simply put, it forced me to empathize, to understand Abby's perspective and what she had lost. The game does so by walking you through different parts of Abby's life and showing you the kind of person she is, and also how similar she is to Ellie. At first, I was not open to learning about Abby at all, as I was still pissed at her and the developers for making me play as her. But it turns out that was the very thing I needed to be able to understand her. This is done through a process known as effective adaptation, where you are conditioned through exposure. Essentially, your emotional responses directed towards something become weaker over time through constant interactions. In this case, it refers to the player being forced to play as Abby and, over time, having their negative feelings towards her weaken. Obviously, this needs to be paired with new knowledge and justifications for her actions, but it is through this process that I saw my feelings start to even out. So by the end, what made me want to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 is its lack of fear to make the player feel emotions that most games wouldn't dare go near. It's how the game uses discomfort as a tool for empathy. The anger I felt was never a design flaw, instead it was an emotional mechanism meant to bring me closer to understanding the other side. It existed to express something specific, something harsh, but ultimately meaningful. Having fun is the simplest and often most effective motivator for engagement. Getting a bullet bill in Mario Kart, testing a new weapon skill, or landing a disgusting headshot. All of these moments are textbook instances of fun. It's easy to understand why we play games for these experiences and why we keep coming back. But fun is not even close to the only motivator we have to play games. There is achievement, mastery, competition, role-playing, and so on. I could go on for hours about any of these, but I think the best example, the one that separates itself the most from the traditional idea of fun, is curiosity. When thinking about this motivator, Outer Wilds is the game that instantly comes to mind. The reason for this is because Outer Wilds has absolutely zero physical measures of progress throughout the roughly 20 hours it takes to complete. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means you don't level up, you don't find new items, and you don't gain any new abilities. If I were to give my save file to a new player, they would not be able to tell any difference. This is where curiosity enters the picture. The only thing that changes throughout your entire playthrough is you. You explore, you gain knowledge, and you use that newfound knowledge to explore even more throughout each 22-minute time loop. The game starts by a campfire, and you are given one task serving as the tutorial. That is, to go and get the launch codes needed to set out on your journey. You go to the observatory to get the key, and you are asked one simple question. What is your plan once you're in space? That's it. That's the tutorial. And I know a lot of people who would argue that this is a terrible introduction, that it doesn't teach you anything, which is usually the whole point of a tutorial. But to me, it couldn't be more perfect. Like I mentioned in my last video, the first hour of a game is supposed to act as a snapshot of what the rest of the experience will be like. Think of the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild or the Asylum Demon in Dark Souls. These introductions teach you the mindset you'll need to have for the rest of the journey. Outer Wilds does this in one single question. What's your plan once you're in space? Because that question is the whole game. Once you reach space and fulfill your answer to that question, 10 more start to emerge, and for every one you answer, another fills its place. Outer Wilds is built on a loop that isn't just a time loop, but a gameplay loop that is built on, expanded upon, and sustained by nothing but questions and answers. It's time for me to come clean. I lied. There actually is some form of progression in the form of your ship log. This is where information you have encountered is stored, and is often the place where you find out where to go next. It acts like an intricate quest marker, but is molded perfectly to fit the journey of discovery you embark on. Instead of telling you objectives, it tracks questions, and so it won't tell you where to go. It shows you what you know and what you might want to know next. Curiosity is Outer Wilds. It's not like Shadow of the Colossus or The Last of Us, where guilt and empathy are powerful aspects of the experience, but don't make up the whole thing. A player's experience with Outer Wilds is fully dependent on the questions they ask, the knowledge they gain, and the places this information takes them. You are rewarded with understanding, not necessarily success. This makes the whole reward system based on intrinsic motivation, where you engage in an activity just for the inherent satisfaction that comes along with it, as opposed to gaining external rewards such as new weapons or armor. Having this kind of discovery without built-in reward structures challenges the purely dopamine-driven idea of engagement, which so many games like to follow. Most games hide rewards behind enemy encounters or level-ups. Outer Wilds hides them behind ideas. Even the structure of the game reinforces this. The entire solar system resets every 22 minutes, but your knowledge doesn't. I posed a question in the beginning of the video about whether a game even needed to be fun at all, and Outer Wilds is living proof that it doesn't. In a lot of ways, Outer Wilds abandons the traditional idea of fun entirely. Not because it isn't enjoyable, it absolutely is, but because enjoyment isn't what drives you to keep playing. Curiosity is. The need to understand how the universe works and what mysteries it's hiding. All of you watching this video like to play games, or if I may be so bold, love to play games. I am also assuming that each one of you has a game that is special to you, not only for nostalgic reasons, but for the impact it has had on you as a person. A game that you view as a work of art. The interesting thing about art is that it does not always give us pleasure, but instead perspective. Like I said about every other title I mentioned, fun can be present, and it often is. It's just that fun is not normally the priority or takeaway factor that these games leave you with. Really, any game can be seen as art depending on the player, but some reach a more common consensus than others. The one I want to talk about today is already quite well known for its emotional beauty and philosophical themes, that being Nier Automata. As a game, Nier features 26 different endings. Now, 21 of these don't really matter as they come as a result of making a dumb choice or failing a specific objective, and won't normally happen unless you go out of your way for them. At its core, there are 5 different main endings, with most requiring separate playthroughs as different characters from the story. The thing about emotional art, especially in games, is that no two people will walk away with the same interpretation, and Nier is no exception. Sometimes a moment that opens someone's eyes flies right past another's, and endings that could be tragic for one might be hopeful for another. That is why I will talk about Nier from my own personal experience, because often, instead of providing a single meaning, games like this give you the freedom to find your own. Despite how popular and well known it is, many players have still not given Nier Automata a try, and so I'll be covering some of its main themes and the reasons why I view it as a work of art, but I will avoid big spoilers tied to the story in case anyone here gets inspired to play it for themselves. Nier tells a story inviting you to think about what makes you human through its themes of sacrifice, meaning, and purpose, or in better words, what existence is without purpose. It also emphasizes the permanence of death and how absence can create different forms of emotional weight. I could really talk about anything featured in this title, but I think the best way to convey what makes this game a work of art is by looking at the last of the 5 major endings, ending E. Normally, a game's ending serves a very simple purpose, to tie off the narrative in a way that leaves the player satisfied, which often includes a cutscene that takes place in the future, or an answer to a question that you have been trying to decipher throughout your playthrough. Ending E is different. It does not focus on the plot, but rather on perspective. It still serves the same purpose of leaving the player with a sense of closure, but it doesn't do so through your typical cutscene. Instead, it is done so through the credits, or I guess a minigame featuring the credits. My first impression was that it was a neat and interactive way to allow the player to appreciate those who put so much work into this game, very similar to how Smash Ultimate implements a shooter into its credits shown after completing Classic Mode. It wasn't terribly special, but the song that accompanied it was nothing short of beautiful, so I continued to mindlessly shoot the names while I contemplated all the hours I had placed into my journey. The minigame started out simple, but eventually I could tell it was getting harder and harder with more and more projectiles flying around, and so I died. But here is where the ending truly starts. I was asked if I wanted to give up. At first, I continued as I felt confident I could do this, and the soundtrack still had a hold of my attention. But I continued to die as the game got harder and harder. Eventually, you start to see messages from other players. They keep you going as you deny each and every offer for the game to end. Then, the offers change. They start to ask you the meaning of it all. Is it all pointless? Do you admit there is no meaning to this world? Do you think games are silly little things? At this point, the credits become a near impossible bullet hell, and I found myself dying seconds after respawning, and every death being met with a chance to give up. The thought did cross my mind. After all, these credits signify the end of the game. What reason do I have to keep going? But I continued anyway. Even now, I still can't put into words why, but I realize that may just be the whole point. Things don't always have to make sense to have meaning, and sometimes just existing is purpose enough. The exact themes that Nier has been trying to convey throughout its entire narrative. These ideas are only now just coming full circle, as now I, the player, am being forced to reflect, not just witnessing the message through the characters I control. If you keep refusing to give up, you will eventually receive help from other players in the form of extra firepower and a seemingly infinite number of lives. However, every time you get hit, a message appears notifying you that a player's data has been lost. I thought this was just a way of telling me they died. After all, we are playing as androids. But that was not the case. I had realized the meaning this game carried and the purpose I had in its world, but there was one more theme left untouched by these credits: sacrifice. After the credits end, you are able to write a message that will encourage other players to keep pushing forward, similar to the ones that had helped you. Then you are asked if you'd like to help the weak, ensuring that it will save someone else, but in exchange, you must give up all of your save data. This is where I realized that all of those players who had lost their data actually did lose their data, that it was not just a way of telling me they died. I felt that it was only right for me to do the same for another player, and so I agreed to the proposal. The game will now do everything in its power to ensure you are firm in your decision, reminding you that the person you help is a complete stranger and may even be someone you dislike. The game dangles the new options you unlocked, like chapter select and debug mode, seeing if you will falter. If you stand firm, this is where the game will truly end. Your menu will open as you watch your save file being deleted one item at a time. The best way to describe the feeling this ending invoked would be through the concept of self-transcendence, the term used to describe the experience of expanding past your own personal boundaries in order to feel connection with something greater. The strange thing about this last ending is that it's not satisfying in the way most endings try to be. You don't walk away feeling powerful or rewarded or triumphant. You walk away feeling connected, feeling like you participated in something that meant more than your own progress. For a brief moment, the game invites you to step outside the boundaries of merely being a player and actually take part in its message. I didn't give up simply because it felt right. It was a moment where the game's theme stopped being ideas delivered by characters and started being something I actually experienced firsthand. This is where the concept of self-transcendence finally clicked for me. It's the moment where Nier makes you realize that meaning doesn't always have to be logical or convenient. Sometimes it's enough to care, to choose compassion. And that's why I see Nier as a work of emotional art. It uses repetition, perspective, and sacrifice to say something about being human. And it says it in a way only a game can. There's no reward waiting for you when it ends. All it gives you is perspective. In a video centered around the idea that not every game needs to be fun, Nier Automata might be the clearest example of what that means. Some games are designed to thrill you, some are designed to challenge you. Nier is designed to move you. It exists not to entertain, but to express. It doesn't try to distract you from life like many games often do. Instead, it tries to reflect it. And in doing so, it becomes something far more meaningful to me than fun ever could. When looking back on all the games I've covered today, the consensus is pretty simple. Fun is one way to value a game, but it isn't the only way. Shadow of the Colossus turns progress into guilt. The Last of Us Part 2 uses anger and discomfort to force empathy. Outer Wilds swaps traditional rewards for knowledge and lets curiosity drive engagement. And Nier doesn't try to entertain so much as express. None of this replaces fun or implies that these games are not fun in their own ways. I still love the chaos of Mario Kart and the comfort of Pokemon. It's about expanding and recognizing the reasons we play different titles. When a game moves past fun, it's not abandoning what makes them enjoyable. They are tapping into something that only this medium can do. Books will tell you what a character feels and movies can show you, but games are able to make you feel it yourself by placing you directly in the position that creates that emotion. That is what makes them so unique. I mostly wanted to make this video to showcase how far games have come as a form of media and the range of emotions they can draw out of the player. So if there's one thing I hope you take away, it's that the value of a game doesn't need to be measured solely on how enjoyable it is in the moment. Sometimes the most important experiences are the ones that linger, the ones you think about time and time again. Thanks for sticking to the end. I hope this was an entertaining watch and gave you something to think about. If you have any thoughts about the topic, leave them down below as I love to read through them all. If this type of content is something you want to see more of, then consider liking and subscribing as more is on its way. I plan on sticking to the monthly uploads as I find them to be a good mix of consistency and quality. With that, thank you all for watching, and until next time.